these tattoos and stuff. And I will say this, I think if I were a 15-year-old boy, right, and I had been missing, honestly, at the end of the day, he's a 15-year-old boy. I don't think he would, everyone's like, oh, he's going to feel super weird. Like these like strangers who have never met him got a tattoo and things like, and I'm like, he's 15. That's probably not going to rationalize that way in his brain, right? He would absolutely, in my opinion, look at it like, that's awesome. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I think we don't really, like when we say things about kids, it's like we are rationalizing it as an adult and not a child. You know what I mean? It's creepy when you're an adult, yes. But to a kid, I don't think that it would have that sort of creep factor. Now, maybe when he's like 20-some, 30, looking back on, that was really strange that one half blonde, half gray haired lady got like that tattoo for me. But he may never. It might always be like, that's really cool. There were people out there looking for me and they cared. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. But can you explain something to me? Because like this is just maybe it's just me. Okay, I have a tendency to just not understand things. But Betty has constantly talked about Sebastian no longer being with us, package and so on and so forth. And
yeah.
then she said on her live the other day that she really hopes she doesn't have to put wings on it.
Yeah,
meaning that she hopes that it's not right. But what do you mean? Because you're sitting here preaching that he's no longer here. So why wouldn't have you just gone ahead and put the wings on there if you believe that so strongly?
Well, I mean, because there's always a narrative, right? In the beginning,
there you go.
It was, he's alive. I know where he is. I just need the resources to find him. Then we went to, I think it's a change for a grift, quite honestly. Then we go to, oh, I know, his mom poisoned him, right? And then it's now back to, he's coming home. We're going to find him. You know what I mean? It's always like whatever fits, I think, the narrative that they want to push, right? And the only thing I have a problem with is the grift, right? Because I don't think that's any longer the goal. Matter of fact, if you want my honest opinion, I truly believe that Seth is back at work. I really do. I really think that he is back at work. Honest Engine, I think he has gone back to work at the
sheriff's department. Yes. Or at the nonprofit.
I think he has gone back to work at the sheriff's department. He came into Betty's live and I heard Betty saying, I know it's basically still like nighttime for you or whatever. Maybe she said morning. I don't remember, but it was like, okay, which would allude to he's working overnight, right? And I don't know. I feel like he's gone back to work. So I don't feel like the grift is the forefront purpose for coming out and talking on media anymore. There's no shade being thrown. It's him, just look, if you're out there, call 911, do what you need to do to get back here to me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've talked about the fact that the grift is hard to understand at the current moment simply because there isn't an active push for finances to come in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on the same note, the argument that's been presented with that is, well, maybe they were already taken care of. You know what I mean? And we don't know anybody's financials. And at the end of the day, I made this argument in a conversation a few days ago. The biggest issue that people had for a long time, and maybe even still do, with Seth was that he started the GoFundMe, right? Mm. And when you really think about that, you have to stop and ask yourself, well, who said that he couldn't have a GoFundMe?
Right.
And if you remember back to who said that they couldn't have a GoFundMe, if I'm not mistaken, it was Chris that said that, or an agreement between them. And I have to stop and think, well, if it was an all three vote, let's say, Seth wouldn't have stood a chance because Katie's not going to go against Chris and Chris isn't going to go against Katie. So who gave Chris or Katie the right to tell Seth that he couldn't start one? Right? That's always just sat weird with me. Like, I get the point. I get the reasoning behind it, right? But it was almost like a level of do what I say or else type situation. And I don't know how I feel about that. Now, of course, I don't know the ins and outs of that. But it seems while you look back on it, like, why did somebody feel like they had the right to tell Seth what he could and couldn't do?
12 Gauge, thank you very much for the super chat. Great to see you too. No cat kickers here. 12 Gauge is a nut. I mean, I'm with you, right, on that. I mean, and here's the other side of it, right? Something that I find, it is like a common theme, right, in these situations. Everyone is a little put off by the RSVP, right? But if you really think about the root of the problem there, you had a creator who was crossing the line, right? Of just doing a show, running their mouths, whatever. It became I'm going to travel 9+ hours to come here. And then when I do, I'm going to step on your property, right? So there is then this need felt for certain individuals to get something in place where they feel safe, protected, etc., right? I don't understand why anyone faults Seth truly for the RSVP. Does he not honestly have the same right to be sure that people are coming for Sebastian and not necessarily going to be a threat to him or anyone else at that event? I think he does.
I think to a certain extent, but you can't say that it's a public event that you have to RSVP to. I mean, I guess you can. I'm not saying you can't. I just think that with everything that's gone on, it throws a red flag up at people. And it may not be a red flag at all, right? It may just be what it is. But once again, this goes back to people thinking off of how things have gone throughout the case to where they stand now, right? And as far as you are talking about the 3 days after, I see the argument. However, I also see that after 3 days, if you haven't found your son yet, and you are a kind of paycheck to paycheck kind of person, that 4 or 5 more days off work, you might lose your housing, you might lose your car. You know, people are just assuming that people have several $1,000s in the bank in case something bad happens. And reality is, most of us wouldn't be able to last 2 months without a paycheck coming in, or a month without a paycheck coming in.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So, once again, I'm not taking.
I feel like I don't care. Like, I can tell you right now, I would have his attitude. I don't care if it's a public event or not. I want to know who's coming. You do the same thing at a wedding. You know what I mean?
Well, especially after the last one turned into a police-filled shit show.
Right. And again, I think they did it, the way they did it to minimize any bullshit. It's nobody's fault that Betty had a warrant out for her arrest, but Betty, right? And it's no one's fault that she decided to, or they were streaming while they were there, so everyone knew where they were. You know what I mean? That's nobody's fault but y'all's. So if some stuff goes down, you got nobody to blame. Even though I took the blame for being in the right area at the right time, whatever, crucify me. Sometimes the Lord looks out. But I'm just saying, doing it the way they did, not live streaming, making it truly about what they are there for. No one's preoccupied. Nobody's having to look at comments, answer shit, say thanks for the super chat, all that crap. They're really in the moment, right? So, I mean, I'm just saying, if they truly feel like there have been threats, there have been people that are emailing nasty things, they're calling and saying nasty things and hanging up, if that has taken place, right? I don't see a difference in them wanting to ensure their safety than I do with Chris and Katie, right? Everyone has a right to feel safe and secure in everything they do. So, I think
I don't disagree.
RSVP, set it up the way you want to. It's your shit anyway, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and at the end of the day, the people that are most likely bitching about it are people that would have never shown up in the first place.
Agreed.